On March 7th, 2026, a woman named Caitlin Kalinowski sat down at her desk at OpenAI and wrote a resignation letter. She spent years building hardware at Meta. She joined OpenAI to build the future. And now she was leaving because the future had changed. Her statement was one sentence long. It said, "Surveillance of Americans without judicial oversight and lethal autonomy without human authorization are lines that deserved more deliberation than they got." 9 years earlier, OpenAI was founded with a single stated mission: to ensure artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity. Not some of humanity, not the Department of Defense, all of humanity. They wrote it down, they published it, they meant it. So what happened between benefit all of humanity and classified Pentagon network? That's what this story is about. Not whether AI should be used in war. That debate is already over. This is about something older, a pattern that repeats every time a transformative technology appears. And if you understand the pattern, you'll see why Kalinowski's resignation wasn't a surprise. It was the only possible outcome.
Every story has a playbook you were never meant to see.
In the 1930s, a generation of physicists believed they were about to solve the energy crisis. Nuclear fission splitting the atom could produce limitless clean power. No more coal. No more scarcity. The physics was beautiful, and the dream was sincere. These were not weapon scientists. They were idealists who happened to discover something powerful. 80 years later, a group of technologists in San Francisco had a remarkably similar dream. Artificial general intelligence, a system that can reason, learn, and solve any problem, would benefit all of humanity. Not some, all. OpenAI was founded as a nonprofit in 2015. Their charter said it explicitly. And when they wrote their usage policy, they included a line that banned the use of their technology for, and I'm quoting, military and warfare. They wrote it down. They published it. And they weren't alone. In 2018, after 4,000 employees protested a Pentagon drone contract called Project Maven, Google published its AI principles. They promised in writing to never build AI for weapons, never use it for surveillance that violates international norms. 4,000 people signed a petition. A dozen engineers quit, and Google backed down. They let the Maven contract expire. They wrote the principles, published them. Everyone moved on. Remember this moment. You'll need it later. So by 2023, the landscape looked like this: OpenAI, military use banned; Google, weapons and surveillance banned; Anthropic, founded by former OpenAI researchers who left specifically over safety concerns, had the strictest internal policies of all. These weren't vague sentiments. They were published, documented commitments, written in ink. Except here's what history teaches us about promises written in ink. Ink fades, especially when the pressure comes from the right direction. January 10th, 2020. No press conference, no announcement. OpenAI updated its usage policy and removed the words military and warfare. That's it. They just deleted them. A spokesperson said it was part of a rewrite to make the document, quote, clearer and more readable. No one asked them to do this. There was no government directive, no congressional hearing, no national security crisis. They just took the words out. And almost nobody noticed. Why? Not because the Pentagon called, because the math did. By 2024, OpenAI had raised billions in venture capital. By April 2025, they'd hit a $300 billion valuation, the largest private tech deal in history. They were burning roughly $5 billion a year training models. $5 billion, and their investors expected returns. When you owe that much money to that many people, you don't have the luxury of saying no to a $200 million government contract, even if $200 million is only 4% of your annual costs. Because the contract isn't about revenue, it's about political protection. February 4th, 2025, Google quietly removed the language from its AI principles that had been there since 2018. The words that 4,000 employees fought for. The principles that cost a dozen engineers their jobs. The lines that said never weapons, never surveillance. Gone. Demis Hassabis, the head of Google DeepMind, co-wrote the announcement. He said, and read this carefully, "There's a global competition taking place for AI leadership within an increasingly complex geopolitical landscape. We believe democracy should lead. Translation, the enemy might get it first." And here's where this stops being a story about tech companies and becomes something older. In 1939, the letter that convinced Roosevelt to fund nuclear research said one thing: the Germans might build the bomb first. In 2025, the argument that convinced tech companies to abandon their principles said the same thing in different words. China and Russia might achieve AI superiority first. The argument works every time. Not because it's wrong, sometimes the threat is real. It works because it's unfalsifiable. You can never prove the enemy won't get there first. And an unfalsifiable argument is the most powerful tool in the conscription playbook. December 2024, OpenAI partners with defense contractor Anduril Industries. July 2025, the Pentagon awards $200 million AI contracts to Google, xAI, Anthropic, and OpenAI. All four major AI companies. All in. The Pentagon is now requesting a record $14.2 billion for AI and autonomous weapons research. Venture funding for defense tech startups hit $38 billion in the first half of 2025 alone. The pipeline is built. All that's left is the breaking point. February 27th, 2026. Two things happened on the same day. First, the Trump administration designated Anthropic the AI company founded specifically to prioritize safety as a supply chain risk to national security. The first time in American history that label was applied to a domestic AI company. Second, OpenAI announced an agreement to deploy its AI systems inside the Pentagon's classified network. The same day. Why was Anthropic blacklisted? Not for security failures, not for data breaches, not for aiding foreign adversaries. Anthropic was blacklisted because it refused to remove two clauses from its Pentagon contract. Clause 1. Anthropic's AI will not be used for mass surveillance of American citizens. Clause 2. Anthropic's AI will not be used for autonomous weapons without human authorization. That's it. Two red lines. The same red lines OpenAI later claimed to have in its own deal. But Anthropic insisted they be in the actual contract, not in a blog post. And for that, the United States government declared them a threat to national security. Here's the detail that nobody talks about. The system didn't negotiate with Anthropic. It didn't pressure them to change their minds. It didn't offer incentives or compromises. It replaced them. On the same day Anthropic was blacklisted, OpenAI stepped into the gap. New contract, classified access, full deployment. The message wasn't subtle. If you won't do it, we will find someone who will. This is not a negotiation. It's a replacement mechanism. And it works because there is always someone willing to say yes. This has happened before. After the war, Robert Oppenheimer, the man who built the atomic bomb, opposed the development of the hydrogen bomb. He argued it was too dangerous, too indiscriminate, too powerful. And the government's response was not to debate him. It was to strip his security clearance, remove him from the system, and replace him with Edward Teller, a physicist who was willing. The replacement mechanism is 80 years old. Remove the dissenter. Install the willing. Continue the program. 3 days after the deal, Sam Altman went on social media and said, quote, "It looked opportunistic and sloppy." Opportunistic and sloppy. Not wrong, not unethical. Opportunistic and sloppy. Oppenheimer said, "I feel I have blood on my hands." Altman said, "It looks sloppy." Draw your own conclusions about which generation takes the weight more seriously. The backlash was massive. ChatGPT uninstalls surged 295% overnight. Anthropic's Claude became the #1 free app in America. The hashtag #QuitGPT went viral. 2.5 million users left. Nearly 900 employees at Google and OpenAI signed an open letter urging their companies to refuse AI for surveillance and autonomous weapons. Kalinowski resigned, and none of it changed the deal. OpenAI amended some language, added some guardrails to a blog post. The classified network deployment proceeded. 900 signatures, 2.5 million users, 1 resignation letter, and the system continued. So let's step back, way back, and look at what we're actually seeing. Because this is not a story about OpenAI, it's not a story about the Pentagon, it's not even a story about artificial intelligence. It's a story about what happens every single time when a transformative technology appears. There is a 3-act cycle that plays out every time a technology can reshape power. Act 1, the promise. Scientists or engineers create something transformative. They believe it will benefit humanity. They write principles. They make pledges. They mean it. Act 2, the pressure. A national security narrative activates. The enemy might get there first. The argument is unfalsifiable. You can never prove they won't. One by one, the principles get rewritten, the pledges get deleted, the bans get quietly removed. Act 3. The replacement. When someone refuses, they are not persuaded, they are replaced. The system doesn't need everyone to comply. It just needs enough alternatives to make refusal irrelevant. Oppenheimer refused the hydrogen bomb, replaced by Teller. Anthropic refused autonomous weapons, replaced by OpenAI. Same mechanism, 80 years apart. And here's the part that makes it structural, not moral. Every transformative technology is expensive before it's profitable. Nuclear research cost billions before it generated a watt of commercial electricity. AI models cost billions before they generated $1 of sustainable revenue. And in both cases, there was exactly one entity willing to fund technology at that scale before the commercial market existed: the military. The Manhattan Project wasn't a moral failure by physicists. It was a funding structure. The only organization that could afford nuclear research was the one that wanted a bomb. OpenAI's Pentagon deal isn't a moral failure by engineers. It's the same funding structure. The only entity that can absorb $5 billion a year in AI research costs without demanding immediate commercial returns is a government with a defense budget of $886 billion. So let's go back to that desk. March 7th, Caitlin Kalinowski, the resignation letter. Now you see it differently. She wasn't leaving a company, she was leaving a system that had been running the same playbook for 80 years, a system that didn't need her to comply. It just needed someone else who would. Her resignation was an act of conscience, but the system didn't need her conscience. It needed her replacement, and it already had one. As of today, Anthropic's lawsuit against the United States government is still pending. If they win, it could establish a legal precedent that an AI company cannot be declared a national security threat simply for insisting on ethical red lines. If they lose, or if the case is quietly settled, then the precedent goes the other way. Every future AI company will know ethical red lines are a career-ending liability, and that leaves us with a question that nobody can answer yet. If the only company that drew a line got blacklisted, and if every other company deleted their lines voluntarily, then who is left to decide what AI should and shouldn't do? Not the companies. They've shown us they'll delete their principles when the pressure comes. Not the engineers. 900 signatures didn't change a single clause. Not the users. 2.5 million departures didn't slow the deployment. So who?
If you want to see the playbook behind the next story, subscribe.